morning guys, Ariel over here at Fineth. Today I want to do a little bit of a different cooking video. As you probably know, I currently have a hole over here in my kitchen where my stove and oven wire, and the new one is in the mail. So at the moment all of my cooking is being done on the wood stove. I don't normally do the majority of my cooking there just because, for one, this wood stove is not designed to be a cooking wood stove, though it's possible, as I'll show you. And it's definitely a little harder to control and turn up and turn down even than a wood stove designed for cooking, which is still a little bit more difficult to control than something like a propane stove. So it works, and I'm totally fine doing that for a few days, and I'm glad I have this as a backup if I need it in times like this. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to make popcorn. I didn't eat a lot of popcorn growing up, and then when I did first start eating some, I did microwave popcorn, which is probably what a lot of people do. I don't have a microwave any longer, and I've since realized that there's a lot of things in there that are really not that good for you, aside from the whole issue of whether or not microwaves are good for you. But the artificial butters and stuff kind of taste nasty to me, and so I've learned to really prefer homemade. Now, I very often do homemade popcorn on a regular stove top, and that works just fine as well. But today I'm going to do it on the wood stove. So what I've got on there right now, I set my little pot where I usually have some water simmering to evaporate and make some humidity in there. I've got a little couple tablespoons of butter just melting on there. I'm going to take my little pot, use a little bit of coconut oil. One of the things that actually took me a little bit to learn when I started doing this is you do want to use plenty of oil. Sorry, it's a little chilly in here. Well, it was in my cupboard. It's not in the house. It's like 82 in the house right now. But the coconut oil gets pretty firm. But what you don't want to do is try to skimp too much on the oil that you're going to pop the popcorn in, because that will for sure burn it. It took me a while to figure that out. I was making batches and some would be better and some would tend to burn a little more on the bottom, and I thought, man, why is this? And the one time I kind of dumped an extra big chunk of coconut oil in there and realized that it came out beautifully. More kernels popped. I had less unpopped ones. The butter's thoroughly melted. And I didn't get anything at all burning. So that's kind of what taught me that you need enough oil. And since I've continued to experiment with that, so once you got plenty of oil, and pay attention, just like any other popcorn method, you can't let it go too long or it will burn, and burnt popcorn smells fairly terrible. But I'm just going to let my coconut oil melt in there. Oh, got a crumb in my other bowl. So that's probably a good, I mean, this is a pretty small pot I've got here, but I probably did a very generous tablespoon in there. Can't put that much popcorn in a little tiny pot because it won't have room to expand as it pops. So I'm just going to give that a second to melt, and then I'm going to add my popcorn kernels here so they can start to heat up. Now, on whatever pan you're doing, this will vary just a little bit depending on the size of your pan, but for a pan or pot shaped kind of like this, it seems to work pretty well if you do an amount of popcorn that just barely covers the bottom of the pan. So a single layer thick. You don't want it stacked up multiple layers, because then you will probably have too much popcorn in there. It doesn't look like much at all when you put it in like this, but as that heats and starts to pop, it's going to expand a lot. So you do need some space. So gonna make sure they're all covered in oil. Put the lid on. Now, in my experience, using like a gas stove or an electric stove or whatever kind of stovetop you have, they will pop a little quicker because you can turn the heat up higher. I can't really turn my heat up any higher on my wood stove. As you can see, it's burning. It's been, burning for hours, and there's plenty of hot coals in there and some fresh wood and all that. So that's about as hot as I can make the stove. So it's going to take just a little bit. I think last time I popped it, I was trying to pay attention. It took 2 or 3 minutes to actually start to hear the first pops. But if you're on a stovetop, I find that can be a little faster, or probably on a bigger wood stove, though this is, like I said, plenty big enough to heat my house. So I'm just going to give it a minute here, and then we'll start to hear the little popping and explosions starting up. Okay, about 2 minutes later, just going to show the camera here what I've got. Got my single layer of popcorn kernels. They're kind of starting to swell, and you can hear them sizzling and bubbling. So really shortly we're going to start getting pops. So I like to have my butter and salt ready to go. You can put lots of other flavors on popcorn if you like. The other one I most often do is some garlic powder. You guys probably know I really like garlic. But you could do, if you like spicy popcorn, you could put some kind of red pepper or chili powder on there. You never need much. It goes a long way with something like popcorn. Or I think some people do sweet, versions. You could do a little sugar and cinnamon or something like that if you want to do that. But I can hear, I don't know if the camera's picking up, I can hear the kernels sizzling and I can see them kind of swelling. I know that means they're about to pop. It's a little sketchy to start taking the lid off at this stage, because if you do and they start to pop, they'll go flying across the room for sure. So if I'm doing this and not checking it for a video demonstration, I just leave that lid on until I am hearing popping, and then I keep it on for sure. But I'm trying to show this to you guys, because popping popcorn at home, it's kind of fun. It's super easy, super quick. It's a nice little treat that is fairly expensive if you buy bags of popcorn already popped, or if you buy the microwave popcorn. But when you do it like this, it's really cheap. Salt's not very expensive. Butter's the most expensive ingredient, and you can get a bag of popcorn kernels like this for I think it's usually maybe less than $2 at my local grocery store, and that'll make quite a few bowlfuls of popcorn. So it's a nice little treat if you like having it with a movie night, or just having it as a snack, or whatever else you got going on. You can hear the grease in there. I like to move it around every now and then so I don't start to get anything burning to the bottom. But again, what I've found is the biggest reason you'll get burning is if you don't have enough oil in there when you start cooking. What makes a popcorn kernel pop is something about the really tight seal on the outside of the kernel and the amount of moisture inside. When you heat it, eventually that moisture is turning into steam and creates basically an explosion. I can see where some pops starting. So that's why popcorn pops. And you do have to have popcorn to do this, because some other kinds of corn kernels won't pop because they've got either the shell isn't hard enough to hold the moisture in, or they don't have enough moisture content to get that steam explosion, and so they won't react the same. Once they start popping like this, taking the lid off is not a very good idea unless you want to get potentially hit in the eye with hot popcorn. And if it's, depending on the lid on your kettle, holding onto the lid can be a good idea. This lid's a little bit heavy, so the popcorn popping doesn't knock it off right away, but you can hear that going. Again, I like to give it just a shake every now and then so that nothing's getting burnt onto the bottom. And I know they make popcorn popping kettles with like a handle you can turn to keep that going, but I've found it to be pretty easy to do even with just a standard little pot like this. Back to my theme of I like to use things that are good for more than one use. It's popping away. Like to give it a little shake, like I said. And you'll be able to hear, just like with microwave popcorn, when the popping kind of slows down and stops. Might have got a few too many kernels in there. Yep. Pushing my lid up, pour it in there, and oh, that's what happens when you got a few unpopped kernels. They decide to go squirting out like that. There, he just blew out his neighbors. So, got a bowl of fresh, warm, fluffy popcorn. I like salt and butter, so that is what I'm going to add. You could certainly do like I said, lots of other flavors or different amounts. And with that, I'll just gently mix this up, mix the butter and salt around. A little more salt. And good to go. For just a few pennies, got a full bowl of tasty popcorn. And you can certainly do a little bigger batch if you had a slightly bigger pot. I'm just one person here right at the moment, so I don't need more than that. But give it a try if you've never made your own homemade popcorn. It's fun. It's fun to watch it pop. And do be careful with the lid so you don't end up with either hot oil or popcorn kernels flying around your room and hitting people. Thanks for watching, folks. If you're interested in more info on my off-grid tiny house life, check out some of my other videos here. And if you like what you're seeing, click the little picture of my house to subscribe and then hit the little bell so YouTube actually notifies you every time there's a new video available. See y'all next time.